The Emperor of Darkness structure deck, released in 2016, is highly regarded as one of the best structure deck releases of all time, with some reports claiming that people could take 3 copies of the structure deck, mash them together, and somehow top a regional tournament. Impressive as that might sound, this isn't 2016. We're in 2023. The competitive landscape has shifted so much, and deck building costs for competitive strategies have been slowly on the rise, with the inclusion of powerful, rare, and expensive staples being the mainstay of the game's high cost. But, is it still possible? Can you take 3 copies of a structure deck, mash them together, and attempt to recreate the magic the Monarchs had? Can you find success with just structure decks? Well, we're about to find out. Welcome to the first episode of Success with a Structure Deck. My name is Puzzle Amino and welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoy your stay. As you can tell from the intro, this series will be centering on playing decks that only cost $30 to obtain from any store and seeing if you can win with those cards. But I want this series to be a little bit more than that. Rather than just showing off playing the deck, I want the first half of this video to serve as a buyer's guide, allowing new/reluctant buyers a glimpse into the strategy before they make a purchase. We'll start by looking at the important monsters, spells, and traps included in the structure deck, showcasing off a basic combo that's possible with even a single copy of the deck, and then finally building a deck list involving 3 copies of the deck before taking it to a tournament and seeing how we do. After the tournament summary, I'll give you my suggestions on what cards to add to the deck should you choose to invest into it any further. But what strategy will we showcase today? Well, you're in for a whole lot of fun. Introducing Traptrix, a trap-based stun strategy centered around anthro-looking insects and plants that prey on monsters, unwittingly falling into their traps. We'll begin by covering the monster lineup. As a basic trait shared among all Traptrix monsters, they all have inherent immunity to trap cards to varying degrees. After all, it would be embarrassing if you fell for your own traps that you set. Like that would ever happen to me. Anyways, let's start with Traptrix Mantis. This card is the main searcher of the deck, allowing you to add a Traptrix monster to your hand on normal summon. She also has a trap bounce effect that has its uses, but we'll get to that later. Afterwards, we have Traptrix Putika. Putika allows you to search for Traptrix Garden, a field spell that gives you an additional normal summon of a Traptrix monster. Putika also has an effect on special summon to banish a monster your opponent controls, then giving them a chance to special summon a monster that's been banished. What's important here is that Putika special summons, and not temporarily banishes the card, so while your opponent has the choice on what they want to bring back from the banish zone, the special summon makes your opponent open for your whole cards, which most of the time trigger on a summon. Dionea allows us to special summon a Traptrix monster from the graveyard when they're normaled, and then on special, they get to set a trap in the grave, but banish it if it wasn't used. If it's a trap hole card, it shouldn't be that hard to activate, but if you aren't able to activate it, then Mantis' secondary effect to bounce the set trap can remove it from the field safely. The last Traptrix main deck monster to talk about is Traptrix Aracnocampa, which has a few effects. While it's on the field, the first time a set spell or trap card would be destroyed by card effect, it isn't destroyed. Already a good protection effect on its own, but if you control a Traptrix monster, Aracnocampa allows you to special summon it as a quick effect, allowing you to protect your traps for when they're needed the most. It's an extender and a board protection piece. Need I say more? In terms of in-archetype spells, there's only 2 of them. Traptrix Garden, which we kind of already talked about, so let's cover the other one. Trap Tantalizing Tune, which allows us to draw cards at the cost of discarding either one of our Traptrix monsters or a normal trap. Then, by banishing the card, it allows us to recur our resources back into the deck, which is easily accessible. It's not a bad card by any means, but also it's not exactly necessary to the deck's strategy. For our purposes though, it'll help improve the consistency of the deck. Lastly, while they might not be called Traptrix cards, the whole cards themselves are essential to the deck. There is one trap that is basically another monster, however, and that would be Traptrix Holetta. It has the special ability to activate itself by discarding a trap to special summon itself as a monster. Then, obviously, you have the basic Trap Hole and Bottomless Trap Hole cards that most other people know. Included in the structure deck as well, you get Floodgate Trap Hole, which allows you to punish unprotected summons, Gravedigger's Trap Hole to act as your answer to hand traps, and then Traptrix, pronounced kind of the same but with a different spelling, which can turn itself into any normal trap you want. Lastly, inside the extra deck, we have Traptrix Rafflesia, which allows us to use whole cards from the deck at the cost of an overlay unit. Traptrix Allomeris can help us put monsters onto the field, both our monsters and our opponents, and Traptrix Penguicula can search Traptrick monsters and give our whole cards a more permanent option of making sure our opponent's monsters can't escape our traps. Instead of having monsters being sent to the places they would be because of our traps, we can put it under our Penguicula instead. Great option to go to, going first along with the Rafflesia. Traptrix also has 3 Link monsters. The Link 1 Traptrix Sarah allows to gain massive amounts of cards by just playing the game. The Link 2 Traptrix Calaria serves the same purpose as Allomeris in that it puts monsters on the field. And the Link 3 Traptrix Adipus allows you to push for game by giving all of your Traptrix monsters an attack boost, a multi-target negate, and a pop, all on a singular big body. If you want to win the game after stunning your opponent for long enough, this is the card you make. That goes over all our Traptrix cards, but that's not everything usable inside the deck. Included inside the structure deck, you get 2 Kaiju monsters, which allows you to get rid of your opponent's monsters without targeting, and without destroying them. Important for when your opponent has monsters that have protection against those forms of removal. Tired of waiting for your traps to become live? Well, wait no longer. This deck comes with 2 monsters that are called hand traps, in the form of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring and Retaliating Sea, which can interrupt your opponent's ability to set up the board, making them easier to take down. Lastly, the final trap to mention in the structure deck is Evenly Matched, which can completely delete an opponent's board when going second. Not to mention, you don't even need to set the card if you control no cards on your field. Comebacks, going second, needing something to trigger your Sarah, Evenly does it all. That covers all the main cards in the deck. Let's move on to the combo showcase. Okay, welcome to the combo section. We're going to be showing off one main bread and butter combo for this deck today, and that will be Traptrix Mirmello and Traptrix Putica. So, we'll start off by normal summoning our Traptrix Putica, and then Traptrix Putica effect on normal summon will activate, allowing us to search for Traptrix Garden and add it to our hand. Then we will link off the Traptrix Putica into a Traptrix Sarah. Afterwards, we will activate the Traptrix Garden, which will allow us to get a extra normal summon, which we'll use on our Traptrix Mirmello. Traptrix Mirmello on normal summon allows us to search for any one of our trap hole normal traps and add it to our hand. So we'll add literally anything. My preference is Gravedigger's Trap Hole if I don't know what I'm going up against. Then, because we activated a Traptrix monster effect, our Traptrix Sarah will allow us to set a whole trap card from our deck. We're going to set our Traptrix Holetta to our field. Afterwards, we can activate the Holetta by discarding the trap hole we had searched off the Mirmello, allowing to special summon itself as a monster. Then, because we activated a trap effect, the Sarah is going to activate its effect again, allowing us to special summon a copy of... I have to look for it in the deck, sorry, apologies. A copy of Traptrix Dionea from our deck. Then, Dionea's effect on special summon will activate, allowing us to set the Gravedigger's Trap Hole that we had searched off the Mirmello. This is the optimal position that we want to be in while we're playing Traptrix. A Sarah, a Mirmello, a Holetta, a Dionea, all on field thanks to these 2 cards, and from here you can do a couple of things. But the main thing that you want to be doing is this. We'll overlay the Mirmello and the Holetta into an Allomeris, which if you don't remember allows us to detach 2. In order to special summon from the graveyard, we will special summon Putica. Then from here, we can use Putica and Dionea and overlay them again into a copy of Traptrix Rafflesia. And that is the main combo of the deck. There's a couple of ways to get into here, besides the Mirmello and the Putica, but that's the main way you want to go into it.
The next day.
Alright, so we're back with the deck, and we did about as well as I expected. Not to say that we did bad. We got some wins in there, however, it was mostly losses. I will say, though, we were able to take a couple of games, so that is of merit. And my locals has a history of being extremely rough. So, let's start off with the deck profile, and then I will tell you how we did. So, triple copies of Traptrix Mantis allows us to search for all our Traptrix monsters. Obviously, we're going to play it. Putica allows us to search for Traptrix Garden, but its special summon effect actually came up more instances than you'd think. Next, we're on triple copies of Aracnocampa. The protection literally did not come up once. However, the ability to special summon itself as an extender in order to make Rafflesias or Sarahs or something like that actually did come up a few times. One of the cards that I forgot to mention while I was doing the deck summary was Traptrix Mirmello. I'm sorry. Basically all it does is it searches a hole on normal, and on special it allows us to pop a spell or trap. Both effects came up in a few instances during our matches yesterday. And then double copies of Dionea. Dionea we honestly really want to special summon more than our normal summon, because on special summon it allows us to set a spell or trap. On normal it's fun too, it kind of serves as a extender if we have Setup and Grave, but honestly its special summon effect is more useful for us, especially when we're going first. And then to round out our monsters, we've got triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. It was a good card to be running this format, but once we get into the matchups, I will tell you how that actually ended up serving for us. Next, we're on the 3 traps that we play in this deck. 2 copies of Trap Tantalizing Tune and the 1 copy of Trap Trip Garden. There is Raigekis and Harpy's Feather Dusters that do end up inside of the deck list, but you'll see that later. And next we go into the ever-impressive trap lineup in the Traptrix deck. So, let's start off with the trap monster that is basically a monster, Traptrix Holutea. It starts our plays off going first, and it was a really good addition to the deck, and the deck really needed it. Its special summon came up a couple times than you'd think, because the Sarah can actually set it off of its own effect to set a trap card after using a Traptrix monster effect. So you'd have a monster, you'd have a Traptrix Holetta that you can activate right away. You basically have Rafflesia off of like a singular monster. It was very cool. Next, we're on triple copies of Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare. There were a couple of instances where this came up, and the important thing to note about this card that I forgot to mention inside of the summary of the deck was that Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare does not target for its effect, it just negates it. So it doesn't matter where it is on the field that the special summon monster is, either whether it be on the field or off the field, it just negates the effect. It's very helpful and actually is an extremely useful card, and I'm glad I was playing it at 3. Next, we got 3 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole. Floodgate Trap Hole is kind of a hard card to play in this format. Against Branded, it doesn't exactly do anything, and against Kashtira, it could do a couple of things. It could put in a little bit of work. And the same thing for Super Heavy Samurais. They kind of care about what exactly monsters they have on field, so flipping them face down does actually hurt them a little bit. I would say it has its instances where it comes up, but I would rather want to draw into something else than just the Floodgate Trap Hole, so I'd probably play that at 2 next time around. And then the 2 ofs, we're on 2 copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. This card came up, surprisingly enough, inside of the Vanquish Soul matchup, where if your opponent were to activate the Vanquish Soul bounce effect, because it's a monster effect that activates in hand, the Gravedigger's Trap Hole can actually negate that effect. It's very useful. This card actually had, like, the right number of them in here. I would say that this is the one number of cards that I wouldn't change in the entire deck. This card came up in every single instance that I needed it to, off of something like a Rafflesia, and when I didn't need it, I was easily siding it out. I think 2 is the right number, but like I can easily see people playing 3 of this, depending on the format. If there's just a lot of times where not only do you need to get rid of a monster, but you also need to banish it as well, or you can banish something different, it doesn't really matter. It's a fairly flexible trap, and I like it. I like where it's at though, that too. And then the 1 copy of Bottomless Trap Hole. Surprisingly enough, it didn't come up once, but I will say for one that this was easily the card that was being sided out the most during matchups. I honestly would understand why people would not want to play this card in general. However, I like to have it just in case, off of like a Rafflesia. If like my opponent's playing like Rogue, it's really easy to just Bottomless Trap Hole one of their boss monsters away. So yeah, I'd say play 1. Next, for the non-hold trap cards, we are on 3 copies of Traptrix. Traptrix is a really good trap card because it is literally any single trap card inside of this deck. Something I forgot to mention while we were doing the summary is that you have to banish a copy of the trap in order to set the trap, so it gets a little bit awkward because then you don't have any sense for Rafflesia in most cases, like if you're going to be going for the 2-ofs. The way you fix that is that you play more 3-ofs of the traps that you actually want to be sending off of a Traptrix, and then you don't run into that problem. But yeah, Traptrix at 3, because it's literally any other trap that you want. And then triple copies of Evenly Matched going in the main board. I'd say that for my locals, which did not have any Labyrinth players or mirror matches, Evenly Matched didn't come up as much as I'd like. But for a more general format, I'd say that Evenly Matched is probably the best bet to play in the main deck, because people are going to be playing things more like Labyrinth, like Traptrix. You're going to see a lot more of those matchups where Evenly Matched would actually be helpful. It just didn't come up for me. Anyways, let's go on to our extra deck. On the extra deck, we're going to be starting off with our triple copies of Traptrix Rafflesia. Traptrix Rafflesia is surprisingly more flexible than you'd think because of the fact that its XZ's effect can be applicable to many different situations. It basically turns your deck into a toolbox, and that's something that you don't realize until you're actually playing the deck yourself. So, be sure to understand the situations where you can Rafflesia, because it becomes more useful. It becomes more useful the more you understand the deck and the more you understand matchups. Next, we're on triple copies of Penguicula. Surprisingly enough, there are instances where you'd want to make Rafflesia over Penguicula, but there are obviously the reasons why you would do Penguicula over Rafflesia, and then obviously if you can get them both on the field at the same time, that is the optimal, that is the most optimal ways of playing the Traptrix monsters. Penguicula is just another searcher inside of the deck, so if you have that, if you need that extra extender, and if you can go into extra stuff, like you have an extra level 4 and you need like an Aracnocampa in order to keep going and make a Rafflesia, then by all means do it. But yeah, she's in there. And then we're on 2 copies of Allomeris. Allomeris came up a couple of times where we just needed extra bodies on board, like I'd said inside of the deck summary, and I was right. There were instances where I just needed to resummon out the Penguicula, like I'd used it for like a Link Summon or something like that, and I need Allomeris to detach 2 and then bring that back so that I can keep pushing for game. It was fairly useful, and I liked it where it was at 2. Next, we're moving on to the Link monsters. Triple copies of Traptrix Sarah. This one, you'll notice, is a little bit shinier than the rest, and that's because I don't know where my 3rd copy of the common Traptrix Sarah went. It just disappeared, and I have no idea where it's at, so I found one inside of my personal collection, and we are using it right now inside of the deck. I don't know. Anyways, Traptrix Sarah, just enables you to make a bunch of stuff live by merely playing the game. And when I first started off playing this deck, I didn't realize, I didn't really process and understand that Traptrix Sarah is not only useful on your turn, but actually it's mainly useful on your opponent's turn. Your Traptrix Sarah is actually more useful than you think because it can make a Mirmello live or a Pudica live by special summoning them from the extra deck after you use up a trap. It's fairly useful in those instances, and it just makes your whole trap cards so much nicer to use. And then to round out our Link monsters, we're on 2 copies of Calaria. I literally did not make her once, but you could technically make her. And then 2 copies of Adipus. I made her once, but it was not the right time. Honestly, in this deck, if you are getting to the point where you are summoning out Adipus or Calaria, you've pretty much already won because you have given yourself the flexibility to summon out those monsters rather than keeping Sarah on board. I'm gonna make this really quick. We're gonna go over quickly the side deck that I was using during the event. I was using the Kaijus inside of the side deck, so 3 copies of Kamunkus and triple copies of Godarla. They came up so many times in order for me to get rid of a bunch of random monsters. They were useful. The Retaliating Seas, I also played inside of the side deck. It's another hand trap that basically gets rid of your opponent's ability to recur materials that easily, unless they're on Kashtira. It was very useful against the Branded matchup, but funnily enough, the only Branded player I was going up against, I didn't draw the Retaliating Sea against him. Then we did triple copies of Raigeki and then 1 copies of Harpy's Feather Duster. Both of these cards did not come up once. They were absolutely pointless to put inside of the side deck, but again, it's because I wasn't going up against Labyrinth or Traptrix, which I was expecting for, so that's on me, I suppose. Your side deck is your toolbox. You want to make sure that it is built specifically for your events, and everyone's side deck is a little bit different, and I just made the wrong choice. And then the 3 of copies of the Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare and the Gravedigger's Trap Hole. I'd honestly say we can keep this where it is and then put the Gravedigger's Trap Hole inside of the deck and then maybe take out one of the Floodgates instead. But, you know what, to each their own. But that is the entire deck profile done. Now, we're going to be going over the match summaries. So how do we end up doing anyways? Well, in a full tournament of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which for our instance was about 4 rounds of gameplay, we went 0-4. We didn't win a single round. That's okay, it's perfectly fine. I'm of the opinion that with every single duel, you can learn something out of it, and learn I did. I have a bunch of notes from every single one of these matchups. Sadly, I won't be showing any of these matchups, at least on this video, because all of them look like this. So unless you want to watch that unedited for about 30 minutes-ish for every single round, which would be 4 of them, then by all means, I'll put them inside of the description. But I'll just give you the highlights right here. So round 1, we went up against Super Heavy Samurais, which mainly focuses on comboing off and then building an unbreakable board using synchro monsters. We were able to win the die roll, go first, go on full combo, and then be able to win after stunning our opponent to death. Game 2, we sided in Retaliating Sea, but that didn't matter because we never drew into it. But then, we got hit with the ever-infamous Jinzo Lock. Yeah, most people are playing this card inside of their side decks to counter decks like Labyrinth, and conveniently enough, Traptrix also gets hit pretty damn hard because of it. So we move on to game 3, and even though we were able to go first and go full combo, we still get Jinzo locked. That's fine, because we have our setup still, and we are able to special summon Put-a-Cut to get rid of it temporarily. However, it's only a temporary option. There was one major mistake I did make during this game, and that was forgetting that Holutea actually has a secondary effect that allows you to special summon from grave. If I had gotten one more monster on the field, I could have easily pushed for game. But it didn't happen, Jinzo got resummoned, and I just kind of sort of sputtered out and died from there. Round 2 was a new matchup for me. We were going up against Vanquish Souls. Now here's where the Traptrix matchup gets a little bit tricky. The issue with the Vanquish Soul monsters is that all of their effects are basically guaranteed to pop off if they have a Vanquish Soul monster inside of their hand that they can tag into. However, there's 2 cards that we have that can still interact with those monsters even though they're not on the field: Gravedigger's Trap Hole and Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare. Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare doesn't target, meaning it doesn't exactly care where the monster effect is actually going to be activated before it's resolved. So, you can bounce a Vanquish Soul monster back to the hand, but so long as it meets the requirements, it's still going to get negated by the Trap Hole Nightmare. And then inside of the effect of Gravedigger's Trap Hole, it affects the monster in the hand, so we can still activate the effect of Gravedigger's Trap Hole to stop that Vanquish Soul from activating its effect. I realized these facts a little bit too late, however, and lost both games 1 and 2. Round 3, we're going up against a personal favorite of mine, Branded. This matchup is extremely fair, unless we get to go first. In that case, it's just kind of a walk in the park for us, as I know exactly where to hand trap and to counter my opponent, and he scoops up game 1. I actually made a bit of an oopsie here, misplaying into a Guiding Quem resummoning a Mirror Jade. That gives him literally every single resource he could ever want in the world, and me having to trade up a resource, so really he's plussing here and I just kind of fucked up. Nevertheless, We're able to make him scoop up the cards and go to a Game 2 situation. Game 2, this is where I realize and finally ask the question that Traptrix Sarah can actually set Holutea from the deck. This is also where we realize that Aracnocampa's effect to special summon itself is an effect that will trigger Sarah's set. Another instance of Rafflesia being flexible during this matchup, but it really doesn't matter. We just aren't able to out the board, and we scoop up the cards and go to a Game 3 situation. Game 3, the most unfortunate thing happens. Off of a branded fusion, he is able to send Fallen of Albaz and Jinzo. Oh god. So this is the second time I got Jinzo locked during this tournament. Or well, third if you count the second time the Super Heavy Samurai player did that to me. But after he dropped the Jinzo, that was that. There was literally nothing I can do about it, and I had to scoop. Round 4. Round 4, we're up against Kashtira, even though I didn't think it was going to be Kashtira initially. We're able to win the die roll and go first, and then we're able to actually go full combo here. It doesn't exactly matter because D-Shifter sucks and we couldn't recur any of the materials that we could use to actually go full combo. We just had to end on a Sarah Rafflesia and pass. My opponent plays through the interruptions, then drops TTT on my Rafflesia, attacks with it, and then makes Zeus. Yikes. So safe to say we lose that game. Game 2, we decide to go first, and instead of ending on Rafflesia, we make Penguicula. That was a mistake, because I honestly should have just made Rafflesia so I could interact with my opponent at least a little bit so I can stop my impending doom. And just like that, all of my competitive success was dashed at this tournament. Yikes. So overall, I think that the performance with the deck was pretty good. We weren't able to take any matches, obviously, but we were able to learn a lot of things, and for $30, I was actually pretty impressed with what we were able to do with the deck. However, that doesn't mean that we can't expand and make the strategy a little bit better, so here's 5 cards that are under 10 bucks that you can easily grab to upgrade the deck. Starting off with something easily accessible, Time Space Trap Hole is a common that was just reprinted inside of the OTS Torment packs that was actually missed by the Structured X. It specifically targets your opponent when they're summoning from the hand and or the extra deck, and instead of sending it to the graveyard or the banish zone, which is still accessible by your opponent, it actually sends it back into their respective decks. This is actually the most permanent option of getting rid of a monster, as your opponent will still have to go through the pains of trying to re-summon it to just get it back out again. Next, another really cheap card, Asa the Earth Charmer Immovable, allows you to special summon an Earth monster from your opponent's graveyard, which is really useful when you're going up against the mirror match. But what you're going to be more likely using it for is its second effect. If this Link Summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add an Earth monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. It pretty much allows you to search any one of your Traptrix monsters. Next, a card that can increase the consistency of the deck, Pot of Extravagance. Since you're mainly going to be playing multiple copies of the same extra deck monster over and over again, it doesn't matter if you banish a couple of copies of them in order to draw 2 cards. Number 41, Baguska the Terribly Tired Tapir, requires 2 level 4 monsters to Xyz summon this card, which its basic abilities allow you to stall out the game for long enough for you to draw into your actually good cards, and all this on a $5 card. It's not bad. Lastly, the final card that I'd say you should grab for this deck, which will skirt it right under that $10 line, is Infinite Impermanence. It's a normal trap card, so it's going to trigger your Sarah once you activate it. It's a hand trap if you control no cards in your hand, and it allows you to target a face-up monster your opponent controls and negate its effects. Simple and clean. Doesn't check for normal or special summons, doesn't check for attack or defense, it just targets a monster on the field and negates its effects. And that about wraps up the video. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, and even though I wasn't able to find success with a structure deck, maybe you can. This is Puzzlemino passing turn. See you around.
からの使者スパイダーマン。父とガリアの復讐を俺が果たす。